programs. And I think maybe we just want to back up
Yeah.
and talk about what a wellness plan is or looks like, because I'm not sure that everybody is
Great
clear
idea.
about what that is.
Yeah.
So that may be a good place to
Sure,
start.
so I will take that one, Tim. Thanks
Okay.
so much for the great
Thank
introduction
you.
and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Barry, for this opportunity. So to kick it off, and what is a wellness plan? So when you come together and you think strategically about both what your employees need from a health and wellness perspective and also what they want from a health and wellness perspective, I think you have really the foundations of pulling together a wellness plan. So a couple of things that we do certainly when we start working with clients on wellness is we'll take a look at their claims and we will look at both the prevalence and the cost of various conditions that their populations are struggling with. And we'll look at those conditions based on what are conditions that are more modifiable. So conditions that are largely driven, maybe not entirely driven, but largely driven by various lifestyle behaviors, and look at the behaviors that are underlying those particular conditions, whether that be lack of physical activity or poor diet, weight management, stress. Tim, you had mentioned tobacco as well. Really, those foundational behaviors are the drivers of much of the healthcare costs that we see today and have manifested themselves in chronic conditions that so many of our employee populations are struggling with. So getting a sense of what those conditions are, they might be different depending on the employee population that you're working with. If you're working for a manufacturer, it might be different than a retailer, it might be different than a law firm, et cetera. And it really is driven by the type of workforce that you have. So that we consider is kind of one picture of the story. And then the other picture of the story, of course, is what do employees want from a well-being program? Because if you're not building something that employees want to participate in, you're not going to get the participation that you need, and then you're not going to really drive, obviously, the outcomes that you'd like to drive either. So another exercise that we undertake with clients is we will help them put together a survey for employees, an anonymous survey, so employees feel like they can answer honestly, and really with this message that this wellness program is for you all. We want to be your partner in building it, and we want to hear your thoughts in building it. So we'll take that information and we'll marry that with claims data, and also really talk to senior leadership of the organization as well, and make sure that we're hearing what they would like to get out of the wellness program. Of course, they're the ones that have control of the purse strings, if you will, and so that's a key component, but also just to ensure that they're on board and that they're going to participate as well, because that's how you can see that trickle-down effect. If you don't have your executive director or your CEO participating, as an employee, you might think, well, why should I do that? So that's a critical
and just
component.
creating that culture of wellness.
Absolutely.
That was something that we talked about. This is a second program that we've done in this Work-Life Balance series, and we talked a lot about a culture of caring and how everyone within the organization can help contribute to that, and certain expectations and practices. The other thing that I want to do is make sure that folks out there know that we're a live show today, and so we want to invite your participation. And if you have questions, please give us a call at 802-862-3966. You can also send an email to director@commongoodvt.org. We'd love to take your questions, and we'll address them as they come in. So give us a call or send us an email. So back to the programs and the various components of a wellness plan. Did we touch on that?
Sure, we can certainly touch on that. Yeah, certainly there's been in the past couple of years even, we've seen an evolution of wellness programs and even an evolution in terminology. The kind of the hip term nowadays is well-being, actually. And it really is a manifestation of this idea that it's not just physical wellness that's
so it's
important.
Not just about smoking cessation or weight loss or even healthy eating. It goes
Right. It goes, and to
beyond.
Tim's point earlier, around community well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being even, and not just in a strict religious sense, but what is my purpose here? Do I have an underlying purpose that's driving me to want to come to work every day, to want to do well by my family, et cetera? And so it's pulling all of those components together, and we certainly see a shift in the field to taking that more holistic approach, and I think it's being well received by employee populations because there's a recognition, of course, that all of these things are so intertwined, and that if we are focusing on one area but ignoring another area, that might be an area that there's real employee need and desire to service. So certainly with programs that are keeping that in mind and designing platforms with a more holistic view, that those programs are seeing more success than others that are more kind of tunnel focused.
Yeah, and I think also we serve at Common Good Vermont the nonprofit sector, and so many people who work in the nonprofit sector are helping professionals, and I would imagine there are some real special needs there, and there's there's very stressful work environments and a lot of burnout that happens. So in terms of promoting well-being, I could see some real benefits for everyone, but nonprofit professionals in particular.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to look at the environment that you have within your particular office. And you mentioned earlier, really building that environment and that culture of health. And certainly from a work-life standpoint, really, and you can do this, for instance, with the employee surveys, asking some questions around work-life balance and trying to get some honest answers from your population. You may find that leadership feels one way about how they're supporting work-life balance in the organization, and that the folks that are working underneath them may feel entirely differently. So how do you tap into the pulse and really get that information out is helpful. And then as you're thinking through strategies, and it may be that your managers are assigning projects on a short time frame or over the weekend, or they're sending emails at 11 o'clock at night, and it could be that maybe they don't expect employees will answer that email, but maybe the employee feels like, well, if my manager sent me an email, I need to get back, and that does cause, there's research that shows that does cause stress. In fact, about a year ago, France put a law in place that basically mandates companies with over 50 employees to set specific email hours. So it's interesting that we're seeing it from a regulatory perspective, and certainly there are other companies that, for instance, when you go on vacation, you put that out of office note up. You might come back to the office and the effects of that vacation have worn off because you open your inbox and you have 500 emails sitting there. And so there are some companies that say, if you would like emails to be deleted while you are on vacation, there can be a note that says your message will be deleted. Please email so and so when you return to the office. So that's a little bit more extreme, and certainly as an organization you need to figure out what would be right for you in terms of those types of policies, and making sure that those types of policies also are jiving with one another.
Right.
And another trend that we certainly see is more flexible work arrangements. So maybe if you have a son that plays soccer and has a 3:30 p.m. soccer game, and you'd like to see that soccer game, maybe you make an arrangement with your employer to cut out at 3:30 and then maybe work that evening, 8:30 to 9:30 or 10. Now, if you have an email policy that prohibits you from sending emails later at 8, so you know what I mean in terms of it has to marry with one another. Absolutely.
Understood. And that's one of the things that you do when you meet with an organization to create the program initially is find out what their values are, and again,
Absolutely.
by soliciting that information, you could find out what's important to the employees. Is flex time important? Is
Absolutely.
healthy meals being served in the cafeteria or what have you, the break room.
Right.
So it looks like we've got some questions. So if you're okay, we can jump into that.
Sounds good.
All right. So we're talking a little bit about this. These are more focused on emotional well-being in the office, though, and what employers can do, and maybe give some specific examples of the kind of programs that an employer could offer to help support emotional well-being.
Sure. So one, I think, program that often goes quite underutilized in office environments, and certainly not every organization has this particular benefit, but would be the Employee Assistance Program, or EAP. We find that the vast majority of our clients have access to an EAP, whether they purchase that program as a standalone or it might be embedded with another one of the benefits that they offer. Certainly from a mental health standpoint, that it's a huge benefit. But EAPs also offer, so many other resources as well. So they offer financial support, they can offer legal support, and they can also help with family members as well. So even though if you're the employee, you might think, oh, this benefit is only available to me, but it could be available to certainly your family members. And I think a lot of the stress around or emotional well-being often is you're taking on that stress because you might have a stressful situation that's happening in your family. So just realizing that benefit could be open more broader is quite helpful. I think in today's fast-paced world, I've had several clients put in place various programs around gratitude and realizing, just tapping into this idea of nature and peace. So I have a client currently actually that is looking at doing a photo campaign around what gives you peace, and posting those photos to a board within the organization. So it's a nice opportunity to have an employee reflect on that question, and then be able to share that more broadly. And certainly with Instagram and all the other social media platforms that are available today, that you could do something like that on a social media platform as well if you wanted to.
Nice.
It might be good to add an example of an EAP in practice. Somebody I know was working in a place that had an employee assistance program, an EAP, and was having trouble with a coworker. Trouble meaning conflict, couldn't work things out. Called the EAP, and the EAP included 2 or 3, I don't know how many, personal visits to a counselor.
Wow.
Had those visits and worked it out. Wasn't incredibly happy about the coworker still, but worked it out so that he could be there and not dread going to work. So that's an example of that. And the other thing I'd mention is almost all the group disability policies, long-term disability, include an EAP benefit in there. So if you have a group disability policy, feel free to call the carrier and say, do we have an EAP program there? And they'll have a one-page slick or piece that will talk about how it works.
Oh,
So
interesting.
great
That's good to
benefit.
know. So people might not be aware that they have.
They may already
this
have
benefit.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other benefit, just as we're on the topic of the EAP as well, is that often EAPs can provide some other types of support, such as just time-saving support, right? If you have you have to have a birthday party for your 5-year-old and you don't want to have it at your house, but you have no idea where you should have it, you could literally call up your EAP and have them do some research for you and give you a short list of places where you can have it. So I don't know that that's a service that all EAPs offer, but certainly some of the EAPs that we work with offer that type of service. So just very much a time saving, and from a stress management standpoint, if that's something that's causing you some stress and you don't have time to sit down and do that kind of research, then that's a huge benefit. So and I think oftentimes there's a stigma around the EAP, or people have an idea of what the EAP is for, but if you're able to promote the EAP and give that sort of example, say, hey, did you know your EAP will help you with this?
Yeah.
People might not realize that, and so I would encourage everyone who's listening, if you do have an EAP, really to get on the phone with them and take some time to understand their benefits, and then think about, okay, is this particular benefit, would this be really helpful for me? And if so, it's probably going to be really helpful for your employees as well, and it might be helpful to communicate then the EAP in that way. Did you know they offer this benefit or this benefit? And people might then change their view of the EAP EAP and really utilize it. I mean, Tim, with your accounts, certainly with the accounts that I'm working on as well, we're seeing 4 to 6% utilization, which is just quite low.
Right.
But it's really book of business typically for EAPs. But I personally think if you can communicate it a little bit differently, then it's a good way to increase that utilization.
Is the lower participation with an EIP, do you think that might have something to do with people's concerns about privacy? Because when you're talking with an EAP and you're asking for advice or sharing personal information about something you might be struggling with outside of the workplace, people might have some discomfort about that. So how do you educate employees about who it is that's actually on the other end of the phone?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely critical.
And how that information will or will not be shared with the employer.
Right. And that's certainly a big part of the communication, the messaging that needs to go to employees, that, this organization is completely separate from our own organization. We don't get any of the data back, from any of your conversations, and just, assuring them that that's certainly the case. The other tip with an EAP too is to do managers training. So to know that, for instance, in the example that you had given, Tim, that knowing that if you're a manager and there's some difficulty among your teammates, that the EAP is there for you as well to call and to get some advice on how to handle a particular situation. So we do some manager trainings with EAPs that we work with some of our clients, and we find that it's a good way to disseminate information as well.
Well, it's great. I mean, I think we forget human resources. That's the words human and resources in it, and that isn't just about policies and papers, and but benefits as well are really an opportunity for individuals to get added value out of their healthcare or insurance plans or whatever it might be. So really to think about how these programs could help your quality of life and well-being. And I guess that's probably why, the trend is to call them well-being programs rather than wellness, I guess, because it's so holistic and connected.
I just add to that, to pick up on the manager training part, this is the kind of program that you don't know you need until you need it. So even if there's a conversation or a communication about it, you may forget about it. But if a manager or a coworker sees what's happening and says, oh, by the way, did you know you can call this number?
Right.
Then people will quite often take advantage of it because, oh, now I need it. So that manager training is a really important piece, really helpful piece.
Let's talk also about, so we have other questions as well. There's a question about lunchtime wellness programs, and one of you asked about, so you said, I've heard of organizations that have policies for employees taking lunch or working out during lunch. What do you recommend? So I don't know if we can get into the specifics of things like that, but if you can talk about lunchtime wellness programs or maybe some of the other wellness programs, give some specific examples of things that you've seen other organizations implement, and that might give us some ideas out here.
Absolutely. So we see a lot of employers that utilize that lunch hour for programming, whether that be a lunch and learn type of seminar where employees are encouraged either to bring their own lunch or the organization might pay for lunch and have people come. Certainly, often the free food is an incentive for people to come to the seminar, but on all sorts of topics. And that could be a healthy eating seminar. It could be a mindfulness seminar. To our point earlier about the EAP, we've seen some more creative topics lately. I've seen one called the sandwich generation, addressing this idea that folks in their 40s, early 50s are struggling with aging parents. They're struggling with maybe children in high school going to college, and they feel kind of trapped. So other types of more creative seminars and lunch and learns are great to be able to deliver in that particular space. Certainly, if you have the budget to bring in a fitness instructor on some sort of regular basis, or you can even do, say the first Wednesday of every month, we have a different fitness instructor coming in. Maybe it's yoga one month or boot camp the next month. So there's a number of things that you can do. And because employees are already there, you can capture them in that particular time period. I've had, certainly have clients as well do some programming after the workday is over. And a lot of our clients want to also reach the spouse population, of course, particularly the spouses that are on the health plan. The company is of course paying the cost for those folks as well, so there's an incentive for them to be engaged, obviously, in the program. And so offering some things at that hour as well has been popular for that reason, that a spouse could come. Certainly, a financial wellness seminar is helpful. Is a helpful topic for that joint time.
Good. Well, that was again, if you have any more questions, please feel free, give us a call at 802-862-3966 or send your questions to director@commongoodvt.org. You touched upon participation in these programs, and it was pretty low, the number that you quoted for the EAP. I've seen slightly higher numbers, closer to 50% participation with some wellness plans, but that's still not everybody being involved. So how can an organization get more people to take advantage of these programs? We did touch on that a little bit. Obviously, making sure that people understand what their benefits are and how they may or may not be used, and maybe think a little bit outside the box, like you said, to think about an EAP that can help you with time management or party planning even. But what else could an organization do to encourage greater participation in this program?
Sure.
They're going to invest maybe. We also had another question about incentives. So is there a way that employers can really encourage employees to use these programs, or through incentives?
Absolutely, and incentives are a part. It's really a multi-pronged approach, and I do say I think it's one of the big challenges in our field is how do we get more participation? In reality, a journey of personal health is one that's very personal, and people are ready at different times. So you find that just the idea of quitting smoking, that there's going to be a certain trigger that all of a sudden that person is going to feel that this is the right time to do it, and that's going to be different for me, it's going to be different for Tim, it's going to be different for you as well. I think there are a couple different things that you can do. Certainly offering programming that's very broad is going to be helpful, because I might be struggling with sleep, you might be struggling with healthy eating, or Tim might be struggling with getting more exercise into his day. Everybody is kind of struggling with different things at any given time, and so I would be highly interested in that sleep seminar, right, if that were my issue that I wanted to work on. But not everybody is necessarily going to be interested in that. So just by sure offering some differences is going to be helpful there. Certainly a really thoughtful communication approach is going to be helpful as well. And with that, I think becomes embedded, again, this idea that we talked about a little bit earlier is having a grassroots approach and getting employees involved, and that's asking their opinion, and it's also asking them to maybe join a wellness committee, to have a small group of folks who are coming up with the programming for the wellness program, or similarly having a group of wellness champions who are maybe not coming up with the programs themselves, but are believers and are people within the organization that are probably a little bit more extroverted, that make social connections with other people very well. I think we all know who those people are in our organizations that kind of know everything that's going on, and those are the folks that you want to really help you spread the word, because you will kind of communicate via email or via postal mail, et cetera, hey, this is what's going on, but it may take somebody to say, hey, hey Barry, let's go and see this wellness seminar. I'm really interested in this topic. Will you come with me? And those are the kinds of strategies. I mean, really, you have to do all of it to kind of get the participation that you want. Certainly, the wellness incentives help as well. So we have some clients that offer might be $500 off your insurance premium. If you do a health risk assessment or a biometric screening, or go to get your annual physical, or do some other things, so a premium credit or a contribution into your health savings account, or maybe it's a gift card. So that certainly helps as well. But it's not, you can't just kind of put one strategy in place and hope that you're going to get 90% of your folks to participate. It really is a multifaceted approach.
And I'd add to that having those ideas and starting them, the lunch, the workout, that's important. Continuing on is important. So whatever strategy the company comes up with and they're comfortable with, it's really important to continue that so there's consistency. And people say, boy, they really are committed. They really are interested. The organization is really important in carrying this through. So.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think, so we serve a lot of smaller nonprofits, and I can imagine, offering a $500 incentive to employees may not be something that all organizations can do. So is there, how big does an organization have to be to implement a wellness program? And are there, I don't know, what kind of costs are involved? If an organization, we have a specific question, if we're a small nonprofit with zero budget, what's the most important thing we can do to support wellness in our workplace?
So it's a great point, and I think wellness programs come in all different flavors, and the reality of it is that there's a lot that you can do at very low cost or no budget. Certainly, I would recommend tapping into the resources that you already have. So you already have your health insurance carrier, and that health insurance carrier, maybe it's Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont or United Healthcare or whatever it may be, they have a series of wellness resources that are already available for you, that you're essentially already paying for because you're a customer of that particular carrier. So really understanding and tapping into that is helpful. Certainly, talk to your broker or wellness consultant. Our wellness services for our clients are really embedded in the fee that they're overall paying, and we can really help clients bring kind of external expertise and help with planning as well. At no extra cost. So tapping into those resources, I think, is key. And then also tapping into local resources that you may have as well. So there may be a local hospital that would send a nurse to do blood pressure checks at your wellness fair, and they might do that at no cost for you. Or there might be a running store downtown that will also come to your wellness fair and offer, a free walking analysis or running gait analysis there. So just tapping into those local resources is helpful as well. And Tim, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I think those are great points. The one thing I would add is that if you're a small nonprofit, having a conversation around a table like this, saying, what can we do? What's important to you? And maybe, Linda, you go search out places for exercise ideas, and Barry, you go search out things that help with nutrition, and I go search out resources from the insurance companies, and do it together as a group. And that'll make a huge difference.
I actually recently had a hospital client of mine come across a couple of YouTube videos from experts, and one of the videos was called How to Make Stress Your Friend. It was a really interesting video, 15 minutes, and someone on the wellness committee said, well, why don't we book a conference room, we'll play this video, and they asked one of their physicians to come down to do a little Q&A after that. But that was a really neat topic to bring people together on, and it didn't cost them anything. Yep. So that's just kind of one idea of something that you can do on a very low budget.
Yeah, no, you've definitely given us a lot of great ideas.
There are free apps on your phone that give you exercise to do every hour. 2 minutes of exercise. It sends a reminder. It says stand up and walk here and sit down again. 5 minutes. So there are things like that you can source and say, hey, let's all try this and see how we like it.
Right. Mindfulness apps. I know
Yeah.
there's definitely there's a
Quite a few.
lot that keeps being added to the app market in
Yeah.
terms of gratitude apps and touched upon that. So
Yeah, and it's a great way to reach folks. I mean, we work with a number of clients that have multiple locations too. So, knowing today, we could be fairly certain that everybody pretty much has that smartphone in hand. So, what can you do to deliver on that? And people like getting messages on there. It's often the most effective. I think I heard at a conference recently. I think they were saying 98% of text messages are read within 2 minutes. Or I mean, the communication approach there is it's quite effective for sure.
yeah,
You
we
suggest
talk about
make the smartphone smarter.
use it. Yeah, we could all learn a lot from our smartphones if we would use them the right way. 'Cause there's so much information at our fingertips.
Yes.
So, but they also create a lot of overwhelming.
It's the
distraction,
fine line
and
for
so
sure. Yeah.
Learning how to manage that and balance that. And it's part of what we're talking about today is work-life balance. And I think that we've spent a good amount of time talking about specific things that organizations can implement. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover today before we wrap up our time together?
I think the only other thing that's helpful as we think about wellness program, particularly work-life balance, is that there are quite a few differences generationally. So knowing the average age in your population, if you have an older population or more of a younger millennial population, particularly on the technology question, millennials are very used to technology. They've been using it their entire lives, and they're very accustomed to really blending work and life. And so a lot of the policies around telecommuting or flexible work schedules, those are things that millennials are truly looking for in organizations. And I think it's where also nonprofits can really shine, because they might not be able to offer a huge salary, but can offer some of those benefits that are true value adds for that type of population, and make that type of work environment much more attractive. So I think just keeping those things in mind is helpful as you strategize and come up with your wellness strategy and approach.
Great. Tim?
And I think in terms of a view of how you motivate employees to participate on a smaller organization which is fully insured, meaning they pay the premium regardless of what their claims experience is, you really have the carrot. And the carrot is, hey, if you do this, we'll give you a gift card. Let's do this together as a group. When you're in a larger group that has some self-funding, you have the carrot and the stick. And the stick is, if you don't do, and there are companies that do this, if you don't do biometric screening every year, we're going to charge you more.
Wow.
If you have an annual physical, we'll charge you less. Those sorts of things. If you don't participate in smoking cessation. So there are pieces like that. And I'm always a little hesitant with smoking, because there are physical reasons that people are connected to that also. It's not all a choice. So that's a piece of that. So I'd say that to think about the carrot and the stick, for lack of a better phrase, in terms of different incentives to have people participate. And my final thought on this, I think about this, is we've talked a lot about current employees. And I think a well thought out, a well-executed wellness plan, well-being plan, is something when you have new employees thinking about where they come to work for you, they might say, boy, this place really cares about me more than just a job. And so I encourage us all to think about it as a culture that other people may want to be participating more because of that kind of situation. But it's been great. I've really enjoyed being here and chatting with you.
Well, great.
And all our buddies out there.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it too. I've learned a lot. Certainly, I'm going to look into my EAP and see what kind of benefits I'm missing out on. Because that seems like a really easy step that, I mean, many of us, maybe even all of us, have an EAP. If you're saying it was attached to the, what was it, the
Long-term disability.
long-term disability, which seems like a fairly standard benefit that
Well,
that
probably
many
only about
companies offer?
30% of companies,
Oh, it is,
employers
okay.
provide long-term disability, but probably 100% of the folks out there do.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a relatively small number. But they do that because it keeps the claims down. If they have somebody get in and address something when it starts to become a problem, then they see their claims being less as an insurance company. So it helps on both sides.
Right. Well, it's good. It's definitely, I mean, it sounds like wellness plans are a benefit. It's a win-win
Yeah.
for everyone. So
Even just the conversation about it with an employer and their employees is great. Good start.
well, great.
Absolutely.
Well, it was a great conversation today. Again, thank you so much for being here, Linda
welcome.
and Tim
Thank
from
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
NFP. And thank you all for participating in our conversation and sending in your questions. This kind of wraps up our series on work-life balance for the year, although who knows, maybe we'll do some more shows on it. Next week, on February 16th, we're doing a show. It's part of our Finance Friday webcast series, and that's about social impact investing in Vermont. So that should be a good one. You guys might want to tune into that as well.
Good idea.
And you can find information about that on our website, which is commongoodvt.org. And hopefully you'll all join us again. And thank you so much for watching.